Anyone who doesn't know, my name is Barry Denny. I'm chairman of the West Suffolk Wheelers and Triathlon Club. I'm very, very pleased that so many people could come here for the official opening of our club room. As people will know, we've been using it for a week or two already, but this is the official opening. I'd like to welcome all our members and their families here, but also a number of other guests representing various organisations. Michelle Curran from Abbeycroft Leisure, Trevor Beckwith from St Edmundsbury Borough Council, John Stockwell from British Cycling, Kevin Hamlin from County Upper School, Fergus Muir from the East Anglian and the Eastern Daily Press, Brian Hurrell and Steve Laycock, who run the St Edmundsbury Wheel, what an excellent event that is, Robert Fenner from Fenner Builders, Jamie and Sarah Whiteman from Revel Cycles. All of those organisations have helped us in one way or another, and we thank them all very much for their help. I'm now going to back down. I'm going to hand over to our president Don Picking here, who's going to say a few words about the history of the club before we hand over to Roger Mackenzie, who's our guest of honour from the Priory School, and whose cooperation has enabled us to build this club room here, who will unveil our little plaque. But over to you, Don.
Good afternoon, folks. Pleased to see you all here. And I must start by thanking the club committee led by Barry. If it wasn't for him and all the committee, this wouldn't be here. And saying that, it's had to be the cooperation of Roger of the school, and for letting us have it here and use his track when we use it. Thank you very much, Roger. Amongst the club committee who've been to the forefront of this, apart from Barry, who's really been the works behind it, has been Neville Pettit, our number one on the building side. Helen and Dave Ballum. Now Helen has been a wizard with getting money out of people. She really has worked hard. And Dave is actually a life member of the Mildenhall CC, but Dave is always there when there's something to do. You see him busy around, never says a word but gets on with it. I'd like to thank all them people and everybody else, like Ron and Jeff, who've been involved in the inside of the building. Thank you very much. Well, I will give you a potted history of the club. As most of you know, it's been going 88 years. It was founded in 1922 by a group of enthusiasts in the town. They met at the Garland Mission to start with. And they decided a club would be formed and the headquarters would be at the Everards Hotel. A few of the older people here will remember that. Anyway, that started in the May, and it was then called the Bury St Edmunds Cycling Club. And at that first meeting was the old treasurer from the St Edmundsbury Wheelers, which were about before the First World War. And he presented the club with a cheque for £2, 5 shillings, £2.25. But with that, we bought a genuine silver cup. The oldest trophy the club got is that. Anyway, within 6 weeks, the club had to change its name. The NCU, which is the forerunner of British Cycling, decided that we should be called the West Suffolk Wheelers. For what reason I couldn't find out. But anyway, we became the West Suffolk Wheelers. The club, by the end of that first year, the club had 80 members, believe it or not. And that, I think that was quite a good number for then. Anyway, it carried on the club, and at the end of they started racing the following year. But by the end of the decade, at the late 20s and early 30s, there was a really bad depression. And the club almost ceased to exist. They just chugged along, no races were held, no cups were presented. But after that, in 1932, they started up again and started the Open 50. which has gone on for years and years and years. And then the next big milestone on the club was 1936, when lo and behold, they let in lady members. By the end of the first night of the club, when the women were invited, they'd signed up 20 members. Most of them apparently from the Bury Hand Laundry. You can make what you will of that. Anyway, then we carried on, and they were winning races all over East Anglia, the club. They really did have a good heyday in that time. But then 39 come along, and the war. The club kept going just on club runs till early 41, and then it was decided to postpone all activities until the end of the war. So it was. So by the end of the war, it wasn't formed again until late 46, and 47 was the first year they had racing again. And okay, this was the heyday of club runs, as us older members remember them. Social club runs, when they were out all day for Levenses, dinner and tea, and perhaps a pub stop in the evening. And that went on right through to the 50s, and it wasn't until towards the end of the 50s when clubs started to diminish, because people were then getting cars, because there hadn't been that many car owners prior to that. Anyway, into the 60s, and the next thing we were going to do was start a 12-hour. Now, a 12-hour race, as you can imagine, takes a lot of people. Well, that was a really success, and it got more and more successful. And during the time of us running it, twice we were hosts to the national championships, and that carried on for 20 years. But in the meantime, in the 70s, we had various ups and downs. We had a flourishing cyclocross team, and then we would have some road racing teams then, and it fluctuated all the way through the life of the club. Anyway, towards the end of the 70s, we became sponsored by Grinstead Products, a very firm. And with that, the first money we got from, we bought our competition rollers and the clock, which has now been going since, what, 78. Anyway, then we carried on into the 80s, and it wasn't until late 80s that the sponsorship changed. It went over to Aston Equipment. Anyway,
it's your pacemaker, Rob.
Anyway, then into the 90s, and this is where the club really started to pick up again. And we had held criterions in the town centre in the evenings, and they were very good and sponsored by Barclays and such people, and also by British Sugar. And then in the early 90s we started to use the British Sugar grounds for evening riding for clubs. Not exactly racing, but riding. It was, yeah, it was. Yeah. Anyway, we moved from a road at the bottom there up onto the big hard pads, and that was very, very successful. And that's when we really started with the youngsters, getting them involved. And then after a few years, we went to Barry's factory, because the sugar beet was getting very touchy about accidents and things. So we went to Barry's factory, and then while we were there, somebody come up there and said about the youngsters from the school, could they come? And they certainly did. And they joined in, and we progressed from there. And then, kindly enough, Roger invited us to come and use the playing field here for our go ride for the youngsters. For those of you who don't know a go ride, it really is a good bike handling skill to be picked up, and the youngsters really like it. Anyway, so we progressed to there. In the meantime, we'd run the BCF, as it was then, their 4-up championship. We run that from Bury. And then we eventually, I'm lost. No, I'm not. And then we've eventually decided, the committee decided it would be a good idea to have our headquarters of our own. In the past, we'd been at such places as the Girl Guide Hut, the Sea Scouts Hut, nearly every pub in town, and we ended up with the football ground and then up at Moulton Hall Centre. But there was nowhere to put our bits and pieces and have our equipment out to enjoy training. And so Barry really was the kingpin behind all this. And the club had some money in the subs. We'd never really spent any over the years, from the £7.6p we had at the end of the first year, and it really built up. Anyway, the culmination of it is what you see here today. So all I can say is please enjoy the food when it's open to you, and in the meantime, onward and upwards for the West Suffolk Wheelers and Triathlon Club. Thank you.
There's this real sense that cycling is taking off for everybody again. We were talking about it this morning, myself and Bob. And to me, seeing so many people here, I mean, it's just fantastic this morning, isn't it? And I think that you having your own clubhouse here, it's just going to be that further stimulus. And cycling, I think, in the next 10 years, is going to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And that is to everybody's benefit, whether you're a racing cyclist, whether you're a club cyclist, you know, whether you just like, you know, going down the shops. But, you know, to have this facility here in Bury is fantastic. For us, as a school, we're a school that's got children with special needs. We take children from the whole of West Suffolk, and, you know, we've had this great relationship with you folks to help develop our children's cycling abilities. Because a lot of our children, if they don't cycle, they won't get around, because, you know, they're from poor families. There's not a lot of opportunity to do things. So learning to cycle is an absolute key life skill, and we talked a bit about this at the annual dinner, didn't we? But, you know, the relationship with your folks, enabling our kids to come forward, is fantastic. So we are so grateful for that. And I'd just like to wish you all a fantastic success here at this site. And I understand we're already talking about an extension, aren't we? So okay, we'll move the school out. Anyway, I'd like to congratulate Barry and everyone on what I think is a fantastic achievement.
Perform the act of just pulling the curtain away. It's not much of a curtain, but it should work.
Right, I hereby announce that this clubhouse is open!